Down the world's darkest highways into the vast unknown, yours truly, David Barnabas Spector, leads you on a unique journey into the minds of professional wrestlers, paranormal investigators, and an array of human and inhuman oddities. This is Radio Dark. And on this episode, we are joined by an outstanding musician. A man that plays regularly on Broadway at Layla's in one of my favorite cities, Nashville, Tennessee. Not only is he an awesome musician, he's also an old school traditional pro wrestling fanatic. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to Radio Dark, my friend, Heath Haynes. Heath, thank you so much for joining us on this episode, my friend.
Oh, thanks for having me, David. I really appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite parts of coming to Nashville, Tennessee is going down to Broadway, going to Layla's and seeing Heath Haynes and the High Dollars just completely tear the house down. The handful of times I've seen you live, Heath, there hasn't been one time that you have had a bad set, my friend. It's been absolutely fantastic.
Well, you were very fortunate because there certainly have been bad sets over the years. I've been doing it. I've been playing Saturday night at Layla's on Broadway since the summer of 2006.
Oh wow!
So it'll be 14 years here in a couple of months, and yeah, there's been plenty of singers in there, but I'm glad you caught me on a few good nights, man.
Most definitely. And before we get into our conversation today, where we dive into the career of Heath Haynes, and we'll certainly talk about some wrestling here as well a little later, Heath, if you would, because I want to make sure that for the folks that enjoy the show today, where can they find you on social media?
On social media, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. On Facebook, there's a few Heath Hayneses out there, but if you just look for the Heath Haynes Nashville, Tennessee, you'll find me, and from there, you'll be able to also get to my music page, which is also Heath Haynes, at Heath Haynes Music on Facebook. I'm mainly active on Instagram, and you can find me at Instagram at DJ_dadrock.HeathHaynes. I know that's a little bit lengthy, but I think if you just kind of search for DJ Dadrock, that's my gimmick name for
sure,
my
absolutely.
DJ business I do as well. So DJ Dadrock, Heath Haynes at Instagram, and on Facebook it's just Heath Haynes.
Right on, and I'll make sure that I have links in the description when we post this episode as well for anyone listening. So, when I first met Heath, it was a handful of years ago. Paid a visit to Layla's there on Broadway, and I was wearing one of my collar and elbow hoodies, courtesy of the great Al Snow. And in between sets, Heath came off the stage and he saw my hoodie and said, "What's up with this collar and elbow?" And we started to talk and realized that we had a wee bit in common. Definitely a love for old school professional wrestling. And, the way that you conduct yourself at shows, Heath, I can see that passion for wrestling, because there's times where you almost are healing on the crowd from time to time, especially with the tip jar, which I absolutely love. I loved it. But obviously you've been a long time old school pro wrestling fan. Kind of talk a little bit about, before we get into the music career, let's talk a little bit about wrestling. What initially drew you to being a pro wrestling fan?
Well, before we get into that, I will talk about, first off, for the listeners, now the gigs that you've seen me on, the gigs I play on Broadway, in Nashville are a little different than the gigs you might see bands play wherever it is you live.
Yes, that's for
because
sure.
nobody really does it the way Nashville does it. On Broadway, a band is going to play for anywhere between 3.5 and 4 hours. And during the course of that show, that 3.5 to 4 hours, at different intervals during the show, somebody from the band comes out with a tip jug and goes around and solicits tips from the crowd. That's how we get paid, or those tips.
Sure.
So, so that was our first interaction was during a tip jug pass on one of my Saturday night shows. And yes, I do work heel on the crowd, but during the course of a tip jug pass, I will have, I don't know, 10 to 15 baby face turns during the pass. Because really, because I work baby face for people who are there, who are enjoying the show, tipping the band, engaging in the whole the process of what's happening. Yes, you're going to get babyface Heath Haynes, but if you're just going to stand there, not tip the band, and you're don't even have a drink in your hand, well, then you're going to get the heel Heath Haynes. And but at all times, so this ties into sort of where we were going with my wrestling past and my love of the business, the sport, our great sport. Is I learned how to talk from Dusty Rhodes.
Right on.
You know, and he has always been my number one guy to this day. I love Dusty Rhodes. I got a picture of him, a framed oil painting of him hanging on my wall. One of my prized possessions. And that's where I learned to talk. And I'll use bits and pieces of Dusty Rhodes, actual lines, but mostly it's in the cadence and the emphasis of certain things. And it's Dusty talked people into seats. I try to talk the money into the tip jug.
Oh, well absolutely. And one thing I wanted to make sure that we kind of paint this picture for the listeners and for really anybody involved in the wrestling scene, the wrestling business, is, if you've never been to Nashville, here's how Nashville is on a Saturday night. On Broadway and the surrounding streets, you have got a ton of different venues, bars, restaurants, what have you, all with different flavors of live music pouring out into the streets. And essentially every act that's playing in these different venues is vying for the attention of that audience, the paying customer that's walking through. And the thing is that, with playing, like you stated, for 3 to 4 hours, you're getting a lot of people that are walking in and out, and trying to get those folks to stay a little longer or to put some money in the tip jar. The best way that I can illustrate it to my wrestling people is think about working a fair show or a festival show, but it's not just your show. You've also got competing shows also all lined up in the same, within walking distance of your particular show. So not only are you playing to various size crowds throughout the event, but you also are jockeying, trying to capture the attention and the imagination of that particular audience. And I'll tell you, man, before I first came into Layla's, that's exactly what I was doing. I believe my gal was with me and her family, and we were going in and out of different bars, and we would stop for a little while and leave, and that was fun, but it's getting kind of old. And then we came to see, you playing at Layla's, and you just tore it, you and the band tore it down to where at that point I knew, I'm not going anyplace else tonight. This is where I'm staying.
Yeah, that's the thing about Broadway is, I mean, there's a different band playing every 20 feet. Every door you walk into for 2 city blocks, there's a different band playing on both sides of the streets all night long. And so, yeah, you're fighting for attention. And you said paying customers. Nobody, in my mind, is a paying customer until they pay me.
Sure, I got you, man.
And that's a little bit of the heel attitude coming out. But I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, you can come in, you bought a beer, you're a customer of the bar, but you haven't interacted with me yet. You haven't, it's a delicate balance. But yeah, we're fighting for attention, trying to stand out, trying to do something different. And if I can hang my hat on any one thing that's provided me the longevity that I've had on Broadway in Nashville, it's always being different. It's and just playing what I would want to hear if I was hanging out and in the crowd. And increasingly over the years, what I want to hear and what I feel like playing doesn't necessarily jive with the majority of the audiences down there, but we still find our people. We find our people, or should I say, our people will find us. You know, as Jim Cornette is awful fond of saying, if you like that kind of thing, that's the kind of thing you like. We'll hear that on Broadway. If you like what we're doing, then there's only one place for you on Broadway, and that's going to be at Layla's when we're playing. And through the years, we've been fortunate enough to, for our crowd to be able to find us and take care of us and interact and engage and the whole process. I mean, you can go anywhere and have a drink. You can go anywhere and see a live band, but there's nothing like Broadway and Nashville.
Yes.
And you got and tipping the band is part of it. Like and what you said, like going and checking out different bands is part of it until you find your flavor, until you find the thing that speaks to you, the band that speaks to you, the music, the song, what have you, the voice. And as a consumer, as a customer, like you have to be willing to engage in that and that whole process, the going to the different bars. But, you're not just going to walk into the first place you go into. You're like, all right, this is it, unless you do. but it's it's a process, man, and we've been really myself and all the numerous guys I've played with over the years. We've been fortunate enough to always find that audience, and it's a tough gig, man. I mean, because if you strip everything away, all the trappings, if you strip the microphone, the guitars, the songs, the stage, and everything, essentially it's me hitting people up for money for 4 hours every Saturday night.
Well, it is that, but it's that, and the reason why, I mean, man, 14 years... A 14-year career for anybody in any entertainment genre is huge, and the fact that you've been successful at it is amazing, but a big part of that lies in the fact that you're a hell of a promo, a hell of a talker, a likable personality. Even when you're the best heels, as you and I both know, the best heels in wrestling, the best heels in entertainment period are people that you love to hate. Even though you hate them, you despise them, there's that little part of you inside of you that's like, God, he's an asshole, but man, he's a likable asshole. He's so good at what he does. I still deep down like him. I'll never tell him that, but I actually do really enjoy what he does. And I definitely think that's the flavor of what you bring to the table. But 14-year career in music, absolutely outstanding. Heath, if you would, gonna talk a little bit to our listeners about what got you into music and kind of the early days of the career.
Well, starting off, just as a kid, there was